Hey guys, I am Dark Desert Highway, and today we're going to do a small biography of Saul, who later changed his name to the Apostle Paul. Paul was a Greek-speaking Jew from Asia Minor. Until about the midpoint of his life, Paul was a member of the Pharisees, a religious party that emerged during the later Second Temple period. Pharisees were very careful students of the Hebrew Bible, and Paul was able to quote many scriptures from the Greek translation. Paul spent much of the first half of his life persecuting the Christian movement, an activity to which he refers to several times. Whatever his reasons, Paul's persecutions probably involved traveling from synagogue to synagogue and urging the punishment of Jews who accepted Jesus as the Messiah. The young Paul certainly would have rejected the view that Jesus had been raised after his death, not because he doubted resurrection as such, but because he would not have believed that God chose to favor Jesus by raising him before the time of the judgment of the world. Disobedient members of synagogues were punished and rejected by light flogging with whips. Paul was on his way to Damascus when he had a vision that changed his life. According to Galatians 1:16, God revealed his Son to him. More specifically, Paul states that he saw the Lord, though the book of Acts claims that near Damascus he saw a blinding bright light. Following this revelation, which convinced Paul that God had indeed chosen Jesus to be the promised Messiah, Paul believed that his vision proved that Jesus lived in heaven, that Jesus was the Messiah and God's Son, and that he would soon return. Moreover, Paul thought that the purpose of this revelation was his own appointment to preach among the Gentiles. During the course of his missions, Paul realized that his preaching to Gentiles was creating difficulties for the Christians in Jerusalem, who thought that Gentiles must become Jewish in order to join the Christian movement. There he was arrested for taking a Gentile too far into the temple precincts, and, after a series of trials, he was sent to Rome. Moreover, Paul thought that the purpose of his revelation was his own appointment to preach among the Gentiles. By the time of his last letter, Romans, he could clearly describe his own place in God's plan. The Hebrew prophets, he wrote, had predicted that in the days to come, God would restore the tribes of Israel and that the Gentiles would turn to worship the one true God. Paul maintained that his place in this scheme was to win the Gentiles, both Greeks and barbarians, the common term for non-Greeks at the time. Moreover, he had to spend much, possibly most, of his time working to support himself. As a tent maker, he worked with leather, and leather work is not noisy. While he worked, therefore, he could have talked, and once he was found to have something interesting to say, people would have dropped by from time to listen. It is very probable that Paul spread the gospel in this way. Of the 27 books in the New Testament, 13 are attributed to Paul, and approximately half of another, the Acts of Apostles, deal with Paul's life and works. Thus, about half of the New Testament stems from Paul and the people whom he influenced. Only 7 of the 13 letters, however, can be accepted as being entirely authentic, dictated by Paul himself. The others come from followers writing in his name, who often use material from his surviving letters and who may have had access to letters written by Paul that no longer survive.